Thank you for joining us here in our last Best of 5 series here at the Columbus Invitational. This one is for it all. It's the championship between Max McVety and Craig Krempels. The more things change, the more they stay the same. Last weekend, we introduced our new format, standard with Shadows over Innistrad. The finals, Mono White Humans versus Bant Company. Jim Davis on Bant Company was victorious then. We were wondering what sort of technology players would be bringing this weekend for our first Invitational with the new set, and there was a whole host of different sorts of decks coming around. But in the end, the same two strategies meeting in the finals again.
These are definitively the two most popular decks in Standard currently, and easily somewhere in the top 3 power rankings. How exactly that falls, unclear, but definitely the most popular choices.
As the better seed in the tournament, Max McVety will get to go first as we are underway. He starts off on Basic Plains, Craig on Evolving Wilds. Now, no 1-drop for the Mono White Humans deck is actually uncommon.
Yeah, that is really unfortunate for McVety, and a Knight of the White Orchid on 2 not finding a Plains is also kind of awkward. This is not the ideal draw for McVety.
Yeah, he has a slow start. Now, when you say the 1-drops, not all aggro decks start on 1, but this Mono White Humans deck, I mean, we have Dragon Hunter, Kythian, Thraben Inspector.
Town Gossipmonger.
That's an addition. How many of them is he on this weekend?
So between all of those, we're at exactly 14, and the only other 1-mana spell in the deck is Griff's Boon. There are 3 copies of that as well.
Max did keep on 7 here. We see Craig getting a Forest with his Evolving Wilds. Now, if you're not going to play 1-drop into 2-drop, or 1-drop into triple 1-drop, I imagine he kept a 7, so he's got to keep it based on some sort of power. What do you think's coming down then?
I assume that we have at least 1 copy of Always Watching. That's kind of the hallmark card of the deck, and presumably we're going to be able to play the powerful 2-drops, the Thalia's Lieutenants, and be able to beef up our team here. That's where the actual text on Knight of the White Orchid of being a human makes it a reasonable turn 2 play. So I'm assuming that there's a lot of 2-drops and at least an Always Watching.
All right, Duskwatch Recruiter is the play on Krempels' side. He played a Port Town revealing Canopy Vista. So we know he has more lands in hand now. That one won't come into play untapped just yet, as Craig only has 1 basic.
And this is a matchup where Duskwatch Recruiter is about at its worst. McVety is going to be playing spells every turn, so it's never going to flip on his turn. You never want to use 3 mana to recruit.
All right, so McVety missed his 1-drop on turn 1, but he has found one since. His play is a good one here. Town Gossipmonger, followed by Thalia's Lieutenant. That'll put a 1/1 counter on all his humans. That makes the Knight of the White Orchid into a 3/3 for a striker. Too big for the Duskwatch Recruiter to try to block.
Turn 1 for McVety, not very impressive. Turn 2, fine. His turn 3, we're actually in excellent shape now. Pressure is on Craig.
3 creatures in 3 turns, that's about the average of where he wants to be. So we go back to Krempels. And that tap land is going to hurt him. He plays a Canopy Vista tapped and another Duskwatch Recruiter. If it came into play on tapped, we could have seen a Reflector Mage there.
Right. Reflector Mage would have been exactly where he wants to be. It lines up quite well against Town Gossipmonger, for example. That card takes some work to be more than a 1/1, though right now with the Lieutenant it is a 2/2.
And what a play here from Max. The danger of playing 2 cards with the same names in this matchup is exactly what happened. Max casting one of his main deck copies of Declaration in Stone, the rare from Shadows over Innistrad, exiles all creatures with 1 name that your opponent controls. He'll get both Duskwatch Recruiters. Now, he's being a fair guy. He gives Craig back 2 clues for his troubles, but goodness.
Yes, so I mentioned that Craig wasn't going to be messing around activating Duskwatch Recruiter. He's definitely going to be messing around activating clues.
This is an interesting one. Max, he swung for 3 with the Knight of the White Orchid. He could have put Craig down to 11, but instead he chose to hold back the Town Gossipmonger in hopes of transforming it with his Thalia's Lieutenant.
Yeah, you left 3 points of damage on the table. The idea is that the Gossipmonger is going to be a mana sink and a slightly larger creature on the other side, though a Reflector Mage here can punish him quite a bit for that.
Yeah, here's the Reflector Mage from Krempels, and if that's the play, Max just lost out on damage. Reflector Mage will bounce Town Gossipmonger.
Right. Though
that one hurts.
In a full turn cycle, when the Monger comes back, it will pump the Lieutenant, but right now, yeah, I feel like we just lost 3 damage.
Well, I suppose the other way around, he would bounce the Knight of the White Orchid. No. Still, though. Max will play another copy of Knight of the White Orchid. Now that he missed his land drop, he gets a Plains for his troubles. Pumps Thalia's Lieutenant as the Knight is a human. But right now, only the 3/3 Knight can attack.
Well, another Lieutenant would be huge here.
And he has it. Second Thalia's Lieutenant puts all the creatures out of range of the Reflector Mage. So now a 4/4 Lieutenant, a 4/4 Knight of the White Orchid. They both swing in. Craig either has to chump block or go to 6. His options are thin.
Yeah, the attacks here are great. At this point in time, we got to focus on how much those 3 points of damage that McVety left on the table matter. Right now, that's half of Craig's life total.
Yeah, having Craig at 3 here is a very different ball game.
He is under severe duress right now, though. Those are very large creatures on the other side of the table.
There's a chance Max can kill him from 23. Craig plays a 4th land and does not play land, rather. He just untaps and passes. He has collected company up. Now, if he had the 5th land, he does have a copy of Archangel Avacyn in hand. He's not going to be able to go for that one right now.
Right, and the collected company, getting the 2 bodies is actually likely to matter on this board state here. He wants to be able to get blockers and the extra Reflector Mage or Bounding Krasis ability to remove another attacker. His life total is just really low.
Not much instant speed interaction Max can use to deal with that sort of collected company. He has Stasis Snare, a 2 of in his deck that could flash into play and remove a blocker. He's going to play Town Gossip Monger first. That will pump both the Thalia's lieutenants. Up to 5/5 and 2/2 respectively.
And I think we're in always watching territory. Maybe he just doesn't have always
How about
watching.
if you only play Thalia's lieutenants? That seems fine.
That's a very similar effect to always watching.
Yeah,
It'll add the
counter on
body for
everyone.
next turn. Yeah, that was great.
2 counters on the lieutenant, so on both lieutenants. So Max, a 4/4 lieutenant, a 7/7 lieutenant, a 5/5 knight, a 4/4 knight. These creatures are all huge. He's going to go to attacks, and now Craig collect a company, and he's got to hope it's a good one.
For not having action on 1, the follow-up from there from McVety has been just about perfect.
3 Thalia's lieutenants is tough for any deck to deal with.
And to be fair to Craig, his draw just lined up horrifically for this game. The turn 3 tapped land, 2 copies of the same creature, the Declaration in Stone sweeping them up.
Yeah, I mean, his lands came into play tapped a lot of the time. He had, yeah, you're right, 2 of the same card for the Declaration. That was the backbreaking one, but it's not even like those 2/2s were that good.
Right, even on the table, they were kind of bad.
Tireless Tracker and Bounding Krasis are found off collected company. It's a hit of 2. Max is going to swing the team. He's got a 5/5 First Striker, a 4/4 Lieutenant, and a 4/4 Knight of the White Orchid.
And so Max asks, how many chump blocks would you like to make this turn?
If Craig were at 3, Craig would just have to chump block all of them.
Right.
He can now afford to kill 1, chump 1, take damage, cross his fingers pretty hard.
We're in the territory where that missed damage has a noticeable impact, but not close to it actually swinging the game. Right.
So a double block on the first Thalia's Lieutenant. Craig will take 4 on first strike damage, go to 2. Then Craig will lose his Reflector Mage. He will lose one of the 2 blockers, and Max will lose the Lieutenant. So Lieutenant's down, Craig at 2. Looks like Max leaves Craig with a Tireless Tracker. That makes sense. I don't think Craig can actually pump this guy. Like, does Max care if Craig makes clues or cracks clues? I don't think Max cares about either of them. And yeah, no more play here from Craig. Game 1 for Max McVety.
Yeah, there was just a bunch of creatures that he had to deal with. Making 1 creature larger and wasting mana drawing at cards wasn't going to do nearly enough on that board. You know, in game 1, no access to Tragic Arrogance for Craig, so there was really nothing that came close to catching back up. Once McVety got that far ahead, Craig was just going to lose that game.
Well, those players are going to get ready for the sideboard. We want to give a shout out to those of you following us on Twitch TV and especially on YouTube. We broadcast all weekend over on YouTube. And also, if you missed any of the other matches from this weekend, you can go over and find us. And that and all these matches over at the YouTube channel. So on the YouTube channel, we have our Versus series, our premium archives, the archives of the SCG Tour, including all the events from this weekend, unboxings, and a whole lot more at youtube.com/StarCityGames. And a special weekend here on YouTube. Especially want to give a shout out here to one of our media directors. This is Jonathan Choi. One of the guys behind the scenes that you never really see at Star City Games Live was not able to be here this weekend as he got married this weekend, and we want to go ahead and congratulate him on that. He is responsible for your premium videos, these Versus videos, the Commander Series videos, works on those in-house in Roanoke. So congratulations once again to Jonathan on a beautiful marriage.
Yeah, and as you can see, it looks like they are dancing to the hit song Gangnam Style here. That looks like the horse thing. He's not doing it right, but his wife is.
Yeah, congratulations to both him and Stacy.
So Stacy, you keep doing what you're doing.
She's dancing it better than he is here.
In a wedding dress.
Wow. All right.
It's clear who married up. It's clear who married up here.
All right, we're going to go back to the sideboards here. So, for Craig, shuffling up for game 2 only 9 minutes in, this is unfamiliar territory.
Yeah, I didn't know he lost games.
Yeah, he has only dropped 1 game in the top 8. That was game 3 against Logan Mize. Has so far now 6-2 here on Sunday. But we're going to go to the sideboards. Game 1 always figures, I would bet when Max McVety wins the die roll, game 1, at any point during this invitational, he's got a thing in his head, yeah, I'm probably a favorite to win. If doesn't even know what his opponent's playing.
We're not on the level of Legacy Dredge, but if we're not winning game 1 with our mono-white aggressive deck on the play, why are we playing this deck?
Yeah. So things figure to get harder after sideboard. Let's start with what Craig can do to kind of mitigate this onslaught.
Yeah, so Hidden Dragon Slayer doesn't kill anything outside of, say, a Thalia's Lieutenant that's already out of hand, but it does have lifelink. So that's a good one to just have on turn 2 to start gaining some life. Lantern Scout coming in for the similar reason. That one's going to gain some life as well. Declaration in Stone, so we can try to have those swings that McVety had in the opposite direction. That would have been great against those Thalia's Lieutenants, for example.
When Max has 2 cards with the same name, I don't know if he ever has the luxury to not cast them.
Yeah, he just has to commit to the board. He can't wait around because the game just favors Craig as it goes longer. And another thing he has going for him, 2 copies of Tragic Arrogance.
Okay, a sweeper. I could definitely get behind that against a mono-white deck.
Yeah, and it could clean up any extra copies of, say, Always Watching or maybe some Silk Wraps that are hanging out and leave the last one to get tagged by a Dromoka's command.
So that's his plan. I've heard this seems about average for a Bant Company deck to have. The matchup's going to get closer. I don't know if it goes completely in his favor, but it definitely is going to be harder for McVety. Now, McVety has some counterplay in his sideboard. We see a sideboard here. Archangel of Ties, Hanvir Militia Captain, Silk Wrap, Eerie Interlude, Hallowed Moonlight, Stasis Snare, Hidden Dragon Slayer.
So Silk Wrap and Stasis Snare will help him to push his tempo in the early game. I like those just kind of 1-for-1. You just want to get ahead and win that way. Hallowed Moonlight has to be for Collected Company, exactly. I don't know what we're messing around with this card for
I'm
if it's
surprised
not for this matchup.
if leaving 2 mana up seems difficult in Max's deck, but if it's in his sideboard, I would assume it comes in here.
Well, the thing is, you don't always have to do anything in your pre-combat main phase, and so when you get to those situations where Craig's leaving up 4 mana, you go to declare attacks, you can leave the spell up at least that long, maybe tap out later if you have to. It's in combat where the companies matter the most. So I think that's the kind of timing we're looking for on this spell. And then I also like the Hanweir Militia Captains here because outside of the Tragic Arrogance, Craig is not going to be really sweeping your team. And in addition, you get to stop committing creatures when you have 4, when you have the Militia Captain, and still making more.
Hanweir Militia Captain is the kind of thing, I mean, so it's a 2/2 that has a flip clause of if you control 4 or more creatures.
Right.
That's a really high bar to hit, but so I would, in theory, think this is good against decks with very little removal, which I'll admit, I'm not very high on that card right now. My concern is that Craig is boarding into more removal. We'll see if Max goes that way as we go ahead and get into the game. Craig on Basic Forest, Max, now he's got a 1-drop, Thraben Inspector on the board.
Inspector Clouseau making an appearance.
All right, for Craig, 2 basic lands on Sylvan Advocate. This is just about perfect for him.
Yeah, Sylvan Advocate just combats favorably against everything.
And 2 basics, so maybe Craig could get all his lands into play untapped. For Max, it's a copy of Thalia's Lieutenant. I assume he was hoping for 2 damage there, but just a 2/3 on each side is not going to go Max's way just yet.
Yeah, and a lot of hands for Craig are going to enable him to cast a 2-drop here, though even a Duskwatch Recruiter would not be getting in the way of the Inspector.
We'll see if he has more battle for Zendikar lands. And look at this, an attack here from Krempels.
So how many Dromoka commands do we have?
I mean, on the surface, Max could double block, but I assume he just doesn't care at all about his own life total.
Yeah.
He'll just take damage, whatever.
Listen, if you kill me in a damage race before I kill you, how was I possibly winning that game?
All right, back to Max. Craig's turn 3 was just Lumbering Falls. We see Knight of the White Orchid from Max. Card from Magic Origins here. Originally, I believe, from Alara.
Yeah, Shards of Alara. Card saw a lot of play back then. It was a little bit of a standard sleeper this time. It's been in standard for a while. It's really taking off now.
We saw some play in mono-white Devotion from it because, hey, it has 2 blue-white mana symbols on it. And I didn't necessarily think we'd see more of it after, but we do. And now the attack begins. He will declare that the Advocate be in stone and attack for 4 damage. Yeah, Craig will crack the clue. Yeah, that's fine.
There's got to be more awkward verbiage for casting Declaration in Stone
declare,
on a creature.
declare that the creature be in stone.
If we worked really hard, we could come up
that
with...
is the most elegant way to say it. Fourth land from Krempels. A pass. Now, this is interesting. You'd think Collected Company, right? Fourth land from his deck, say go. There are Hallowed Moonlights in Max's sideboard.
Yeah, this is the window.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, there's some value, right? So if he does it main phase and he finds a Bounding Crassus, Craig feels pretty dumb. If he does it on Max's turn and Max Hallowed Moonlights, that Craig feels really bad about it.
Yeah, and we haven't seen Craig play as much of a gambling man. I don't know if he's the kind of guy that's going to be like, I just don't think you have it. But, he has Collected Company here, and I think you're leaving up the man at this point. It's that or Bounding Crassus, right? He's doing something.
Right. So we look at McVety. If he had the Hallowed Moonlight, and this is me try to do the poker thing, okay? I think he would have attacked by now. And if I'm right, so if I'm Craig, I'm the more Max waits here, the less scared I'm getting of Hallowed Moonlight.
But if I drink the wine in front of me,
ooh, I like this. All right. Griff's Boon. I love auras. Auras are just the best.
I love them in my draft decks.
On Thalia's Lieutenant. You don't know, they're not just for creatures with hexproof. Creatures without hexproof have better stats. Griff's Boon will give 1/0 and flying to Thalia's Lieutenant, and Max is going to swing just the Lieutenant. This is a really interesting shot of him to, I guess, split the difference as far as playing around Company is concerned.
Yeah.
Craig's going to cast it anyway. I'm a little surprised he casts it now and not on Max's attack. No, I guess that makes sense. If he misses, were he to cast on Max's attack to try to find a Krasis and then he misses creatures, there's a chance that Max then swings everything.
Yeah, could just get punched in the face.
So the fear of the unknown played into Craig's favor there. He only took 3, went down to 13. Company finds Duskwatch Recruiter and Reflector Mage. He could Reflector Mage Thalia's Lieutenant. Ew, I don't... Yeah, no thank you. Knight of the White Orchid. I know... There's a tempting to do it to the Lieutenant because it has an aura on it, right? But Thalia's Lieutenant, I don't...
That one, that does some things when it enters the battlefield.
And actually a heads-up play here by Max to put the Griff's Boon on the Thalia's Lieutenant for that reason.
Right.
He's got to have Reflector Mage on the mind and just thinking, well... Okay.
Yeah, Craig's just not passing for no reason.
No, I mean, there's a Company here for sure. You go back to Krempels. His draw was Nissa the Vastwood Seer. And he'll go ahead and cast that. He stayed 13, a relatively healthy total here. He'll get a basic forest. That Sylvan Advocate early on doing a great job of buying Craig some life points. He also was able, and this is pretty rare in this matchup, when the Declaration in Stone happened, Craig actually found time to crack the clue.
Yeah, he just cracked that early on and didn't damage his tempo in any meaningful way, as we see. He actually now has more creatures than the aggressive deck.
Yeah. Game 1, I believe Craig died with 3 clues on the battlefield. He never had time to crack any of them.
Right. The Declaration in Stones came at much more awkward times for Craig and also hit 2 creatures. We saw it sweep up Sylvan Advocates.
And the play goes back to McVety. Craig leaving up 2 mana. Conveniently, it is the mana required for Dromoka's command, so Max will have to be aware. Max will cast Knight of the White Orchid. Does not trigger to get a Plains, but it does trigger and put another counter on Thalia's Lieutenant.
Right, and with 5 lands in play, McVety doesn't really care about that trigger.
And going to go for an attack. Here's 4 in the air from the Lieutenant. He'll see if Craig has any play. Dromoka's command, possibly. Nope, Craig will go to 9. So this flyer is going to get rather large here on Max's side. What are the ways Craig can answer?
So we're still in fighting territory with Dromoka's command. It only has 3 toughness currently. We're also in a position where we can cast Tragic Arrogance. Kind of a funny thing happens. You can let McVety keep, say, Knight of the White Orchid, and then name Griff's Boon as the enchantment. But it doesn't matter.
Don't you?
Yeah, because it's attached to an aura that's just on a creature that's going to die.
6th land for Krempels. He's at 9. I suppose Archangel Avacyn might solve the problem of everything.
Yeah, there are a few problems that Archangel Avacyn can't solve.
So the 6th land for Krempels. He'll pass the turn, and now his Duskwatch Recruiter becomes the Crawling Horde Howler.
If it weren't already obvious that Craig was leaving up something, just not activating that Recruiter drives it completely home.
The worry for Craig would be if he goes for any plays, Stasis Snare could blow out that Dromoka's command. Max does have some number of them in the deck. It's funny, with those 2 cards, whichever one gets cast first is way worse. Right? If Max casts the Snare, then Craig's going to make him sack an enchantment. He's going to fight something. Wait, actually, hold on. The sack enchantment part, there's a Griff's Boon.
Yeah,
I apologize.
Boon on blocking duty.
Thraben Inspector, the play for McVety. It makes a token. And he's going to go ahead and sacrifice to draw a card. Growing Thalia's Lieutenant again. Now a 2-turn clock. Here comes 5 damage. Craig's hand is going to be forced very quickly here. Griff's Boon, maybe, I think for me, the most surprising card out of Shadows over Innistrad to see play here.
Yeah, it's the only card that I saw in Constructed Decks Week 1 that I hadn't considered whatsoever. Like, Duskwatch Recruiter actually looked like it could have been a reasonable card. I didn't go ahead and build any decks or anything, but Griff's Boon was not even close to on my radar.
I feel like we should have known, so whenever people ask what's going to see play out of the new set, my snarky default answer is Sort Gatherer, anything that costs 1, 2, or is a mythic rare. So that should be your list.
Those are strong guidelines.
It's not that complicated. All 1s and 2s and all mythic rares.
Yeah, you made it a mathematic thing.
All right, Dromoka's command. Craig has to make a move here. He's going to try for it. We will see the modes he picks. And see, by that metric, Griff's Boon does cost 1. I mean, okay, it looks like a bad aura because it is.
So what are you saying? Did the card surprise you, or did your system figure it out?
The system figured it out, but I disregarded my system. See, the problem was user error.
So, like, one way or the other, you're not endorsing your system. You're either just literally
I'm endorsing my system and not endorsing me.
You're literally saying you don't follow your system or that your system missed it.
So the modes that Craig is going to pick is Sacrifice an Enchantment to put a 1/1 counter on Reflector Mage. Well, look at that. Griff's Boon just ate half of Dromoka's command, and it's coming back, too.
Yeah, 4 mana brings that card right back into play on a creature.
Thalia's Lieutenant drops down to the ground. The Griff has left it. It's now just a 4/4. And now it'll be fed to the wolves. And the wizards.
And the elves.
And the elves. The 3 creatures will jump in front of Lieutenant. Max will get to take 1 creature with it. And he has an interesting choice. There's a 3/4 and a 3/3. Those are the best blockers. However, Craig has 6 lands. Nissa, planeswalkers that make 4/4s. Okay, maybe you have to kill that.
Yeah, a 4/4, of course, slightly larger than a 3/4. I think you want to go for the Nissa here.
Yeah, Griff's Boon, we'll get that on screen here. It's not done just yet. Max can get that one back into play. Now, it's not cheap. This is an uncommon. For 4 mana, he can put it back on the battlefield on any creature, but only at sorcery speed.
Much maligned line of text in Magic.
Play this only when you play a sorcery?
Right.
I love those. I love those. Then I can go make a sandwich while I hit F6.
The downfall of many textbook skimmers.
Yeah.
Wait, that's a sorcery?
Oh. You don't like it when the cards that say draw 2 cards on them then have sorcery written in the middle of them? that bugs you?
It's not my favorite.
Some nice sorcery card draw. It's great. Max deciding which creature he wants to take down with it. He will go for the Nissa. Besides, the Planeswalker is just too much of a liability.
In a 3/3 and a 4/4, or in a 3/3 and a 3/4, are going to do combat very well against all of McVety's creatures, at least until we see some Anthem effects coming down and making them larger. But the Griff's Boon lets him fly over both of these creatures.
And the Griff will come back to the battlefield. It is now on Knight of the White Orchid. We pass back McVety with 3 cards in hand, though I believe it is 2 basic planes number 8 and 9, and a copy of Stasis Snare. So 9 lands this mono white humans deck. That is a large number.
Mentioned earlier that McVety doesn't really care if he's getting Knight of the White Orchid triggers or not, but he really does care about actually drawing those lands. That is very poor.
Well, with these monocolor aggro decks, we'll see that a lot. You know, they play so hard toward the early game that land drops in the late game just are dead cards. No copies of Westvale Abbey in Max's list either, just 20 planes. Start of many a great Magic deck, 20x planes. I have never registered more than 5, I think more than 6 planes in a deck.
Basic Plains is probably in my bottom 3, like my least favorite lands in Magic.
Craig no plays, passes the turn back. His Wolf turns back into a 3/3, and now it's always watching from Max McVety. And it'll be the team. Here's Knight of the White Orchid, now a 4-power flyer. Thraben Inspector, now a 3/4. Favorable blocks abound. And Craig is going to go ahead and activate Lumbering Falls. So now he has 2 3/3s to block with. I guess he can double block Thraben Inspector. Yeah.
That is a...
yeah.
Those are some words.
Interesting. Max has a Stasis Snare, I believe. The question will be whether or not he wants to Stasis Snare the Howler. If he does, he gets the Lumbering Falls for free, or he can just trade with the Howler, and maybe he kind of gets the Lumbering Falls anyway because Craig can't actually spend every turn activating it.
Yeah, the Lumbering Falls is not a huge concern if that stays on the table here.
If that's what Craig's doing, then okay.
Yeah, if your board is going to continue to be spend 5 mana on this 3/3 and have this 3/4, you're at 5. I'm going to kill you with this Knight of the White Orchid.
Craig goes down to 5. Max plays Plains number 8. Passes back the turn. And we go to Krempels. He's at 5, behind on creatures. You know, he's pulling close to stabilizing here. Just 5 cards in hand, I believe. He'll recast Duskwatch. He'll cast another Duskwatch Recruiter. He'll tap 3 to look for cards. That's a great sign if you're a fan of Max McVety.
Yeah. Not a sign of strength for Krempels there.
He does find Reflector Mage, an excellent find here. But the card Griff's Boon may just be what's winning Max this game.
Yeah, if you bounce a creature, the Griff's Boon just goes to the graveyard.
Right, goes to the next card.
Max has 1,000 mana, so he can return it to play.
Next guy up in line for the Griff rides, Thraben Inspector.
Everybody gets a turn on the Griff.
Here's Reflector Mage. He'll put the Knight of the White Orchid back into Max. I have to assume into Max's hand. All right, that bounces back. Now, one thing Craig did last turn, see, he got an attack with his Reflector Mage. He may just swing the card again. If he's positive that Max is going to Griff Boon up that Inspector, I mean, you might as well attack, right?
Yeah, you're attacking your 3/4 into his 2/3. This Max just has too much mana not to Griff Boon on the following turn.
It's likely Max will just make all the plays possible and still have land left over.
Right.
So we go back over to McVety. He's at 12. Griff's Boon will go on to Thraben Inspector. Between that and Always Watching, it is a 3/3 flyer. It's a 2-turn clock. Here's a swing. Krempels down to 2. Can Max survive another turn? He cannot play Knight of the White Orchid because of Reflector Mage. He can play Town Gossipmonger. That was his draw. He will pass with Stasis Snare in hand and hope that he can survive to the next turn.
I believe that's the Kythian hero of Akros.
Oh, I believe you are right. It's the flip Planeswalker. Does it I think it's just a blocker, right?
Right. It's for as indestructible as Kythian can make himself, he's still as vulnerable to Reflector Mage and Bounding Krasis as any other creature in McVety's deck.
Big draw for Krempels here, a copy of Dramoka's Command. Now, sacrificing an enchantment, hilariously, he cannot get rid of the Griff's Boon because Max will sack Always Watching.
What he actually has to do is just fight this Thraben Inspector on Max's combat.
Ugh. Max has Stasis Snare in hand, though. If that's true,
he can just get rid of the guy fighting.
Yeah. So he may be defended from Dramoka's Command. You think Griff's Boon, you say Griff's Boon is there to protect Always Watching. I'm going to counter. Always Watching is there to protect Griff's Boon.
You know, in desperate times.
We can't let this aura hit the yard. It's too good.
So Craig has tapped off of it now, but if this was the line that he was expecting, he wants to play around Stasis Snare, he had the option of animating Lumbering Falls and using the Dramoka's Command to fight the land with Hex.
Oh, wow.
That has Hexproof.
Okay, yeah.
Depending how things shape up from here, this could work out to be a misstep by Craig.
You're absolutely right. If he wants to play it, that would play around Stasis Snare. And if he has Max dead in 2 turns, maybe it's right to play around Stasis Snare. On the other hand, he
That
may
said,
have
yeah, if
Hidden
Craig can
Dragon
find
Slayers, I think, that what he's going for instead.
If he was able to find a Bounding Krasis, or if there's one in hand, that's what he really wants.
Okay, so he activated Duskwatch Recruiter and found Hidden Dragon Slayer. But that's not going to do anything here.
Yeah, it won't be able to get into combat. That lifelink doesn't matter. And
Thraben Inspector is no dragon. It's only a 3/3. Were it a 4-power creature, this would work.
Yeah, if we played that face down into McVety, got a little loose and played another Anthem effect.
So with 6 mana here, hold on a second. Craig still has the Activate Lumbering Falls Dromoka's command line available.
Oh yeah, you're right. 4 mana to activate it, and then it can still tap for mana to fight as well.
The last one. So a pass of the turn. Kralin Horde Howler again from Krempels. He needs to make sure Thraben Inspector does not hit him. Now, the downside is that Craig did not attack with anything that last turn, which means, okay, so maybe he kills Thraben Inspector. It's good on him. The difficulty here is that he has to make sure that Max is dead on the next turn. Because anything less than dead, and this is going to happen again.
Yeah, the boon just keeps coming back.
Right. Now the Knight of the White Orchid in Max's hand, that's live. Max is going to go for the win. Here's the swing of Thraben Inspector. And heads up play here by Krempels. But we'll see if that 4 mana. I believe he's activating the Lumbering Falls. Yeah, activate of Lumbering Falls. This is a great heads up play for Craig. We'll see if it's enough. Yeah, Lumbering Falls becomes a 3/3. We're playing around Stasis there, and Max has it too. That's the best part.
Right. Very good play by Craig.
And now, Dromoka's command. No. That guy is hexproof.
Yeah, McVety a little bit hasty here. Looks like he could have been locked into casting a Stasis Snare.
Yeah, I think he cast it in response thinking he'd won the game, but the judges ruled whether or not, if Max declares it, he has to cast Stasis Snare.
He tapped 3 lands if there was a verbal cue, Stasis Snare.
Yeah, it does not hit Lumbering Falls. Now, he's not actually allowed to choose Lumbering Falls as a target, so he does get to pick something else.
The other thing as well is that it's an enter the battlefield trigger for the card.
Okay, so it hadn't even resolved yet.
Right.
So both the Thraben Inspector and the Griff's Boon die. Craig chose Fight Lumbering Falls away, put a 1/1 counter on Reflector Mage. So the Lumbering Falls from Craig actually does go to the graveyard. And on McVety's turn, he will play That's Town Gossip Monger and Knight of the White Orchid.
And he still has mana to make Kythian indestructible.
Yeah. I mean, he's at 12.
Yeah, Craig, that the Lumbering Falls.
That was a great play by Krempels.
But he's just treading water.
And it looks like a lot of lands in Craig's hand. He's got this Hidden Dragon Slayer. So this is interesting, actually. Craig has Hidden Dragon Slayer, and unfortunately for Max, Max has seen that Craig has Dragon Slayer. If Max hadn't, so Griff's Boon, if it goes on a Knight of the White Orchid, we can slay it. If it goes on to Kythian, we can slay it. If Max puts the Griff's Boon onto Town Gossip Monger and does not flip it, it is not big enough to be killed by Hidden Dragon Slayer.
Right.
So Craig will play the face down morph. And the thing is that if Max hadn't seen the Hidden Dragon Slayer after Duskwatch Recruiter, I think he'd probably play into this trap.
Yeah, there aren't a ton of Hidden Dragon Slayers in the deck. When there's a morph on the table, it's one of 2 things. You'd assume, you would hope that he would play around Dragon Slayer.
Okay, maybe he does, but it certainly would, it requires some heads up on his part.
It being face up is, of course, a huge difference.
All right, he's going to try for the win. Griff's Boon out of the graveyard.
Oh, Kythian can just
he
make
could
itself
okay,
indestructible
now that's
as well.
The easy way of doing it. All right, he's going to put it on to Kythian. You're right. This also does work. Kythian now. Yeah, Kythian gains indestructible into turn for 3. Craig will flip up Hidden Dragon Slayer to kill Kythian. Max will make it indestructible. Game 2 in the book for Max McVety.
Little handshake there from Craig. Might have forgot we're playing best of 5. Maybe just, be an extra sportsman-like. For Craig, though, he doesn't have an opportunity to rally here.
Yeah, I see a little bit of grimace on Craig's side. I feel that this was that kind of game. The way the game played, tempo-wise, number of turns it went, that will feel like, for Craig, a game that he was supposed to win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Multiple reflector mages, resolved to collected company. The missing parts of the equation is, well, first of all, he never found Archangel Avacyn.
You're at a Magic tournament, and you ask your friend how their round went, and part of their story and their lead-up is they say, well, my mono-white opponent had 9 lands in play, and they've had a bunch of 2-1s. Do you think they're telling you a story about a game that they won? Or a game that they lost?
Well, so my friends have this unfortunate habit, as I think many people listening can relate to, where if they start by telling me a story about their last round,
all of my friends' stories are bad beat
always,
stories.
Yes, they're just because they lost. No one ever comes over and tells me a story about how they won. So, but I understand where, generally the mono white humans player who drew 9 planes, or it was 10 by the end. Yeah, usually that's a good story for his opponent.
Right.
If I ever heard winning stories, I'm sure they'd start that way.
Right.
All right. So 2-0 for Max McVety. He is 1 game win away from so very many things. We're going to look at just what comes with winning the Columbus Invitational. So $10,000 and 50 SCG points go to the winner of this event. The runner-up will finish with 5,040 points. Now, those points, for these players, the Season 1 race has concluded, but it will put them in the lead of the Season 2 race going forward. So what does that mean? Why do we care about the points race? Well, first of all, it's buys at all of our opens. The current leaders get 1 to 2 buys at our opens. Also, the points leader at the end of the season gets an invite for the Players' Championship, as does the winner of this tournament. So for the winner, he'll be in the Players' Championship joining us in Roanoke in November. The loser of this match at 40 points will be sitting in second place in the Players' Championship race for Season 2 if they choose to play the events. So they'll start out in a great spot. Now, that is not it. The winner of the tournament also receives an invitation and airfare to Magic Pro Tour Eldritch Moon. That's a set that's coming out in a few months from now. The Pro Tour is taking place in Sydney, Australia, which is pretty great. So you're going to win a flight there. And that's actually not it. The final thing is you get a personalized token. And we have a great history of these. Illustrated by SCG's own Kristen Plesko. You get your art on a token of your choice. And that token will be given out for all of Season 2 at Opens and during Classics, free with entry.
I don't know that Craig is officially locked in, and of course he's down 2 games, but he was considering being a clue token, and I think that's kind of the obvious one for this weekend for people to consider. It's the new thing. There's no clue token of anybody else. And in fact,
you could play. I play a lot of limited, so I'd be pretty happy getting a clue token of anyone, really.
Yeah, and initially I said, so you want to have a clue? Your token be a standard legal mechanic, and Craig made a good point. Declaration in Stone is actually a modern playable card.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you see players do sometimes is they pick the token that is being used in their deck. Now, token creatures in an always watching deck, there are none in Max's deck, but there is an Thraben Inspector and Declaration in Stone, so perhaps for Max the clue token as well. We'll see.
Yeah, the battle for who gets to be the clue token going into Game 3. For McVety, possibly the deciding game.
One thing about McVety, both players here, their modern deck Max with Infect for the tournament. Craig Krempels on Abzan.
So Max is really into pump spells is what you're saying.
Yeah, 1-drop creatures and then, just getting it done. Guy, attack.
What kind of spells do you like? I like Vines of Vastwood and Grifspoon.
So this is interesting. I love Grifspoon and I don't want anything to do with Vines of Vastwood.
Vines of Vastwood's in my Pauper Cube. That's about as far as I want to commit to it.
I like my pump spells to be permanent. and sorcery speed.
Pump spells don't do me any good because I don't usually control creatures.
If I'm gonna do it and I don't like creatures, then I'm putting sorcery speed auras on them. The thing is, you got to play Magic to feel something, right? So you either got to be comboing someone, or you got to have like a 10-10 big thing that you just put a bunch of auras on. If we're just playing a 2/2 doesn't do it for me. Okay, a 2/2 with no abilities, even if it's a good rate. Like Tarmogoyf is a great rate, but it's just a vanilla card.
For me, it's
not
that
into
the tension of cards Lightning Bolt and Brainstorm, where it's like, am I supposed to cast this card anywhere near now?
Lightning Bolt's 3 damage. Three's just, what is that?
Oh,
That's
no,
just
listen. The fact that these cards happen to be exceptionally powerful is just an afterthought of this conversation.
I would like Lightning Bolt if it was like 1 red, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck. If they're all red, deal 6.
So you're a Thunderous Wrath kind of guy.
Yeah, I could play that. That seems sweet. I'm 5-ing you for 1. Underway, game number 3, Krempels versus McVety. Krempels on the play. Starts out with 2 basic lands, Forest and Plains, and he'll have Hidden Dragon Slayer face up as the 2/1 lifelink. It's going to have to do some defense, though. McVety starting the game on Town Gossip Monger as the 1-drop. This card, one that can take a while to transform. With something like Always Watching, that's where the card really shines. His
Right.
2-drop is Council's Lieutenant.
Now, the downside on the Gossip Monger when it becomes an Incited Rabble is it does have to attack every turn.
It makes some bad decisions.
That's the thing about joining a mob. When people join a mob, they all lose their own minds and gain a new one. They make some bad decisions.
Mobs don't have foresight. It's not a well-calculated thing. It's no long. It's red, right? It's impulsive, and that's why it actually is a red card on the other side.
What do we want? When do we want it? Grr.
All right. So on Craig's turn, not gonna let Max untap. He's gonna use Dromoka's command to have Hidden Dragon Slayer, get a 1/1 counter, and fight Town Gossip Monger. Now, important here is because Dragon Slayer has lifelink, Craig will gain 3 life off that exchange.
So even with the +1/+1 counter, the first strike on the Consul's Lieutenant will allow it to become renowned here.
Yeah, it swings in. It does get renowned. Craig goes to 21. Max's follow-up is Knight of the White Orchid, getting a Plains. We'll see how he continues to develop the board. He did have a Plains in hand as well. He will play a follow-up Thraben Inspector and a Kithian and get a Clue token, and this is what the white deck does. It just plays lots of guys.
Now, if there were an Always Watching off the top here, that would be fantastic for McVety. At this point, he doesn't really want to commit extra creatures to the table because Craig in 2 turns could be casting a Tragic Arrogance.
Yeah. Now keep in mind, Craig actually was on a mulligan to 6 to start this game. So if you're in McVety's spot, you know that maybe there could be some weakness in the hand. It's not necessarily that he's just going to have a turn 5 Tragic Arrogance, but he still has to be aware of it. The card's in Craig's sideboard, and he hasn't seen any of it yet this match.
Mm-hmm. Only 2 copies.
Yeah. Duskwatch Recruiter for Krempels. And, we've seen Craig play these cards like Duskwatch Recruiter in these matchups, and it just seems like on every board that these 2/2s are never up to the task of blocking. I mean, look at this here. 2/2 first strike, 2/1 that makes itself indestructible, 3/2 first strike. None of this does anything. And here's a sign if you've ever seen one of Dromoka's command. Craig is going to swing his 3/2 lifelinker into Max's 2/2 first strike creature.
Yeah, if
Either Craig is just like the next.
I have spotted the Dromoka's command, so he has it. So the question is,
either he's the next Tom Ross here.
Yeah,
or
does
he's
McVety
just
bite?
I would like it. What if he made that attack with no card in hand? Just didn't have the Dromoka's command.
No card in hand.
No. Okay, he has a card in hand. He doesn't have Dromoka's command.
Okay. I think that you do just make that attack,
So
right?
it's no blocks for McVety, and this is a great line from Craig. Before damage, he puts a 1/1 counter on Hidden Dragon Slayer and has it fight Kithian. So he gains 4 life off that. Then the Dragon Slayer connects with McVety. Craig gains 4 more life, and Craig's up to a huge 29 life points.
And I like that attack a lot. The Kithian on the following turn would be flipping into Gideon. And, Craig has demonstrated the power level of some Planeswalkers in his deck previously, but even the mono white deck with the Planeswalker is scary.
If Craig's eventual plan is to cast something like Tragic Arrogance, I think he would like to get rid of the possible Planeswalker.
Right.
So we see Griff's Boon and Always Watching from Max McVety.
Now we don't feel great about casting our 2 Dromoka's commands, though.
I mean, Griff's Boon, just 1 game 2, it's so good against Dromoka's command.
Well, the commands that he cast were good, right? It's just that now that Craig is in trouble.
Well, Craig kind of, he had to change the modes, right? Anyway, we go to this attack. So, the Thraben Inspector, 2/2, 3/3 flying Vigilance. Knight of the White Orchid, 3/3. Council's Lieutenant, 4/3. It's 10 damage. Craig should be down to back below the starting life total.
So I think I just saw a negate in Craig's hand. Now that's bad for 2 reasons. No blue mana, enchantment's already on the table. I might have misread that. The blue I've been seeing could have been the Slumbering Falls, but
we'll see what happens. Craig going to go ahead and play land and pass. Now, there is the option of Duskwatch Recruiter to flip into a 3/3 here. I believe the trigger has been missed by Craig. Judge is going to make a ruling on whether or not that window whether that ship has sailed.
Yeah, they'll talk it out.
If Craig misses it, the ruling will be that Max will get to choose which side the werewolf is on. If the judge rules it is too late.
Yeah, in some situations, even when your opponent has already drawn the card, they rule that you haven't missed the upkeep. It depends on what the communication was and how much time has passed.
Yeah, and this is one of the things where there's no concrete, 5 seconds have passed. The table judge will make a ruling as to whether or not he believes there's an adequate window for Craig to see the trigger.
Right. Magic doesn't have like a chess clock or anything like that. We don't know when the upkeep is or when we're going into the draw step or anything like that. So.
All right. Judge is going to go ahead and make a ruling here. All right, and it seems we have an appeal for the ruling. So we're going to bring you back into the booth here right now in Game 3 of the finals between Max McVety and Craig Krempels. Now, this Brand Company's been really great this weekend. We saw it win the Open last weekend. Max is threatening a 3-game sweep on Craig right now. Especially with the way that Game 2 happened. I don't know. This seems like this might be a weakness for Bant Company.
So the Max's draws have been very good. Now the thing is, there are redundant Anthem effects in this deck. There's 3 copies of Griff Boon as well. You're doing a lot of the same things, and the important thing, though, on top of that, he drew 9 lands and won a game.
All right, well, we have a ruling. So what actually happened, they allowed to give Max the option as to whether the creature should flip. It was deemed that Craig missed the trigger, and Max decided to not flip it. So it'll stay as Duskwatch Recruiter. We go back over to Max's side. He's going to attack with the team. Craig looks like he's going to go ahead and activate Duskwatch Recruiter, revealing Sylvan Advocate. And that block is going to happen. Even though Craig has a 4/3 lifelinker, actually it cannot profitably block any of Max's creatures.
We're really looking for Tragic Arrogance here for Craig.
Well, last turn the land was Lumbering Falls, so it's possible that Craig already had the sweeper. And I think he does. Yeah, it's right. That looks like Tragic Arrogance. And Max has got to know about it. This is the one card that beats him. And Craig has barely stayed alive long enough to cast it. He only had to gain, I think, 15 life after Mocha's commands?
Yeah, that's it.
So if Craig starts at 35, then he can survive to this card. All right. But it's going to happen here. Tragic Arrogance. For each player, Craig chooses one of each kind of Planeswalker, creature, and enchantment that they control, and they lose all the rest of them.
So McVety has 1 artifact, 1 enchantment, no overlap on card types, and still cards in hand. So Craig hasn't won this game just yet. This was just an important step 1.
So Craig gets to pick which one each person keeps. So this is actually pretty neat. He can actually get rid of both of Max's enchantments this way. He picks that Max keeps Griff's Boon. He's actually say keeps Thraben Inspector. He's going to let him keep that. Keeps the Clue token. Craig will keep the Hidden Dragon Slayer.
That was a Griff Boon. That's brutal.
And he'll swing. Max will go ahead and Stasis Snare away the Hidden Dragon Slayer.
Turn off the life gain there.
Yeah, it doesn't want Craig going any higher than 9. 35 has already been tough enough. Here's a swing for 2 from Max. Craig down to 7. A Council's Lieutenant to no pass. Thraben Inspector now a very modest 2/2 flyer. And we'll go back to Krempels. 2 mana is Sylvan Advocate. That's now a 4/5. Craig plays his 6th land.
Yeah, that'll get in front of Council's Lieutenant.
So now we're all in on, we said Inspector Clouseau to seal this one up. Max is going to go to attacks. Craig will tap the Inspector.
Inspector Clouseau has been known to trip now and again, so clumsily falls over and fails to make an attack this turn.
Oh, silly Clouseau. But with that, not many great attacks for Max. Now, Max is at 16 to Craig's 7, but Max's clock is just a 2/2 flyer, and with a 4/5 Vigilance, Craig may actually be able to race while playing defense. Max will cycle Hallowed Moonlight. Just play it to draw a card. Draws a land and says go.
Yeah, just wanted to find some other creature, a little bit of action that he could have played that turn.
Craig was empty-handed. I think at that point saving one for Collected Company, not really worth it. Now Craig has 6 lands and also has this Lumbering Falls in play. You see him kind of shuffle that one over to the side.
Yeah, that's a 5/5 when we activate it.
Pretty decent clock here by Krempels.
Yeah, you know, he knows what his clock is from McVety.
He's going to swing the Krasis and the Advocate for this turn. Lumbering Falls will stay at home. I guess having a hexproof blocker is a very safe place to be.
Right, you don't want that Consul's Lieutenant connecting here.
Yeah, and if he leaves back something else to block, say he swings the Lumbering Falls and leaves back the Krasis, then a Stasis Snare could get him.
Right. You know, the Vigilance allows the Advocate to hang back, but one removal spell would take care of that.
Max down to 9 on end step. He'll go ahead and cast the other Hallowed Moonlight, trying to find enough cards to pull across that finish line.
Yeah, he knows that this game is slipping away if he doesn't close it quickly.
Right, and that's when you play mono white, you do kind of know that eventually you're going to lose control of the board. Hopefully your opponent's dead by then.
Right. McVety has some haymakers, but he doesn't have anything like Collected Company that Craig does.
Declaration in Stone will get rid of the Sylvan Advocate, and with that goes most of Craig's clock.
Craig has enough mana to crack that clue token here, though, so this isn't free.
He goes to attacks. I think Craig cracks the clue token to see if he can find Bounding Krasis there.
Krasis or Collected Company. Now that both Howling Moonlights have been cycled.
Well, that would make... We'll see exactly where we are. And he'll swing both. So by tapping there, Craig took down Lumbering Falls mana. And now he takes 4. Instead of 2. Wow, that's...
Took a gamble trying to find
I don't
some
know
action.
about that.
Yeah, it didn't end up paying off.
Now he's really under some duress. And the Council Lieutenant as a 3/2. The Lumbering Falls will not block that anymore. Knight of the White Orchid from McVety. Triggers, McVety gets a Plains. And a bit of a misstep here from Krempels has cost him dearly.
Yeah.
So you think he was trying to find a Krasis there, right? Or a company?
Krasis or a company, right.
He'll
and
untap.
at this point, even Tragic Care against the only copy left in Krempel's deck doesn't even look great. Even
Archangel
if he had
Avacyn, perhaps?
Yeah, Avacyn can block the Grifspoon Flyer, so that would be strong.
We'll see where Craig goes. It is Tireless Tracker.
That's not what he needs.
Port Town will get him a clue. Well, he has another turn to work with. You know, it's only 2 in the air from that
Well,
Graven Inspector.
that's not
Yeah.
true. Consul's Lieutenant is going to trigger and make
Oh,
that
wow.
3.
When it's renowned, it pumps all other creatures, doesn't it?
Right. The fact that the Lumbering Falls wasn't around to block that last
Oh
turn
my.
makes this attack lethal.
That cost him 2 turns off the clock, 3 turns off the clock. And Max has drawn another copy of Grifspoon. He's going to put on Knight of the White Orchid, swing the team, and that is going to be game, match, and championship for Max McVety. A clean sweep of Craig Krempels, and we have it. And the 22-year-old from Ann Arbor is your Season 1 Columbus Invitational winner.